Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Let's please welcome our main speaker, which is Bob.
Who is Bob? Hi, my name is Bob Lemke. I'm an alcoholic. Glad to be here. It's always a pleasure for me to participate in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's a little more meaningful when there's some new people or comparatively new people. Because whether you new people realize this or not, and I'm sure you don't because we didn't, fact of life. Next to us old-timers, you're the second most important people in the room tonight. Don't ever forget it. But really, without you new people, this thing would probably end up with us, all of us old-timers sitting around here telling these same old stories. We'd probably all get drunk. I'm what this book says is a real alcoholic. In fact, I'm one of them bar-drinking drunks. Are there any bar drinkers here tonight? Thank God. I mean, I don't know where the rest of you did your thing, but I'll tell you this, if you didn't get some bar time in, you missed a lot of fun. I loved everything about those joints. You know, I loved everything that goes on in there. I like the smell in there. I like them stools you can spin around on. I like the mirrors that you got in those places, you know. Lee and I could go out here tomorrow, fact of life, on Washington, open up a joint tomorrow without a mirror, fact of life, we go broke in 2 weeks. 3 things you have to have in this country in order to operate a bar successfully. 1, you got to have the booze. 2nd, you got to have a license to sell it. And 3rd, you got to have a mirror, or you will not make it in the bar business. That mirror, incidentally, is not there for social drinkers. Bars cannot survive on social drinkers. They depend on people who drink in volume. And you and I are the volume drinkers of this world. Social drinkers do weird stuff in bars. You bar drinkers know what I'm talking about. They come in there and they have a couple of drinky poos, and then they start saying weird, all off the wall kind of crap like, "Ooh, I'm getting dizzy, I'm going home." Going home? People like you and I, we sit there all day. And we have to have something to entertain ourselves, and it's usually our own image, thus the mirror. Yeah. We sit there all day long staring in the mirror, you know, figuring things out. I like them jukeboxes they have in them joints. You know, the ones that play Born to Lose all day. And I even got to like the Men's John in them places. And when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, we used to have a guy around here by the name of Norm Alpe, who in my opinion is the greatest speaker Alcoholics Anonymous ever had, ever will have. And he was a bar-drinking drunk, and the first time I heard him, he was up at one of these podiums, and he talked fast. I mean, he's the only man I know in Alcoholics Anonymous can give a 1-hour talk in 32 minutes. I mean, he'd shoot it out there really fast, and you had to listen close to catch it. And he's up there going on, and all of a sudden he said something weird. At least I thought it was. He said he got to be a bathroom slider in the Men's John. And one of the bananas fell out of my ears, and I thought, what's this clown talking about? You know, I thought I'd done it all by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and probably so did you. And here's this guy talking about something completely foreign to me. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And he went on to explain that bathroom sliders in the Men's John, I think in the ladies too, where they have them paid toilets, good, keen, smart alcoholics slide under the door to avoid paying and save that money for drinking whiskey. I thought, by God, why didn't I think of that? Bet you there's a couple of newcomers thinking that right now. And he went on to explain that as soon as he got done doing what he was doing, he'd slide back out too. Never realized, of course, that once you're in there, you can turn the handle and walk out. You know. And anybody that thinks like that is a friend of mine. And so I'm eternally grateful to to the Norm Alpes and the Eddie Regans and the Chuck Chamberlains and the Jimmy Ryans, who said things from podiums like this to drunks like me, or I would not be here. I would not be here. They made sense to me. They talked about stuff that I thought nobody would ever talk about in public. And they talked from podiums like this and told these sordid stories about where the hell they'd been. And I'd say to myself, my God, there's another one just like me. And that's what it's all about, really. Are there any Texans in the room tonight? A couple Texans, yeah. They move around a lot, you know. The reason I ask that is when you talk in Texas, if in the first 5 minutes of your talk you don't tell them your sobriety date, they automatically assume you don't have one, right? Yeah. And so in deference to our Texans, my sobriety date is the 13th of January, 1964, which means I'm coming up on 42 years. And I didn't... I did not come here to get 42 years sober. I came here to get all those people off my back. The damn bill collectors and that woman and those kids and that damn dog. And the IRS. And if they'd all get off of my back, everything would be all right. And that's the way it was. And in the 60s, there were a lot of things going on in this country, including Vietnam. But in addition to that, something that most of you in this room do not know. In every state house in this union at that time, people were meeting in high places, talking about the same problems throughout the country. It was called alcoholism. It was causing economic chaos in this country. Absenteeism was high, broken down equipment, broken up trucks, broken up cars, stolen money, all that kind of crap. It was coming from alcoholism. And they didn't know what to do. Fortunately for you and I, about that same time, 5 truck drivers in Iowa went on a drunk. Yeah, and they were gone for a long time from this little town in Iowa. And at last, when 5 guys are missing from a town, small town, people are getting really concerned. And so a bunch of guys got together on a Saturday. They went out, they formed a posse-like and started looking for these 5 drunk truck drivers. And one of the guys happened to go down this dirt alley and saw this corrugated metal shed. And he got out of the car and opened it up, and there they were. 3 of them were dead from alcohol poisoning, and 2 of them were still alive. And they pulled them out, and they helped them get sober. And wouldn't you know it, one of them got to be the governor of the state of Iowa. Things like that don't happen to people like you and I. And it's incredible. And he used to sneak out of the governor's mansion at 2 in the morning and go and call on some sick drunk. And the drunk didn't even know he was a governor, you know. And the people of Iowa loved him so much that they sent him to the United States Senate. And as soon as he got to the United States Senate, he and 3 other senators sat down and authored a bill to support alcoholism in this country. And they did something unusual for politicians. They put some money where their mouth was. And they helped various and sundry organizations help do something about alcoholism in this country. Don't care what it was, just as long as you were doing something to help alcoholism. Because at that time in this country also, the medical profession defined alcoholism as a Valium deficiency. Fact of life. Yeah, just feed them Valium, keep them quiet. They don't pay their bill anyhow. They cause a big ruckus in the office. They cause all kinds of disturbance. Just keep them quiet. And that's what the idea was. And as soon as this money started flowing into things, the medical profession then got interested in alcoholism. And most of them defined alcoholism, and still today, incidentally, a lot of them define alcoholism. 2 schools of thought today in the medical profession about alcoholism. One side of the house says it's hereditary. You get it in the genes. And the other side of the house says, no, we think it's from consumption and assumption. And I don't know who's right, and I really don't give a damn. I just know I are one. But if this thing has anything to do with hereditary, as soon as I heard this, and I was sober a little while, I started looking back at my family tree And I got all the way back to my great-grandfather and found out he was a drunk. And my great-grandfather was a drunk. I know my grandfather was a drunk. My dad and his two brothers were alcoholics. My oldest brother is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. My two kids are alcoholics. You'd almost think it's hereditary in our family. But then there's my middle brother. He's a social drinker, whatever that is. And I watch him like a hawk. And when I was drinking, he's the one that used to save my can. He lives in Northern California, and I live in Glendale. And I don't know about you, but when I drink, I get into financial problems, you know. I'm one of those that walk in the bar and say, give them all one, you know, big shot, you know. Big shot-itis is one of my biggest problems. Big shot-itis, give them all one. And then I run out of money. And I have to call my brother and say, could you help me out? And he would send it. Invariably, he would send it. And as soon as about a week passes after he sends the money, he'd call me and say things to me like that norms he'd say to alcoholics. He'd say, I heard you're drinking again. I don't know how the hell he knows that. He lives in San Francisco. I live in Glendale. But I got that figured out now. It's my mother. She lives in Wisconsin, 2,000 miles away, and she can smell whiskey on me 2,000 miles away. And she'd call him and say, Bob's drinking again. And then he'd ask me those stupid questions. And today we have, he likes to drink Old Fitz on the rocks. And I watch him, you know. And once a year we have kind of a mini family reunion at my house in the desert. And he comes down here and he likes to have Old Fitz. And so I always have a bottle up on the shelf and I watch him. He comes in my house, heads right for the kitchen, grabs that bottle off the shelf, and then he picks out a big glass, which is a tip-off to me. And you know what he does? He fills it full of ice. And then he takes that bottle and he spritz it around like this, you know, big deal. And he takes that glass of whiskey and goes in my living room, sits down on my couch, takes that glass of whiskey, puts it on my end table, picks up a book and starts to read. I tell him, for God's sake, man, drink it! You know what he does? He sits there for 3 hours sipping and reading. At last I have to leave the house. I can't stand it. I don't know how anybody can do that. All the people I know, and most of the people I know, are members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we don't sip nothing. We're gulpers. We don't sip water. Down. Soda pop. Down. Norm just look at us and say, you drank that already? Yeah, what's the big deal? We don't sip nothing. In fact, it's getting so I don't trust sippers, you know. Something wrong with those people. And so, and then I get to thinking about this hereditary thing, and I start going all the way back, and, you know, why not him? All the rest of us, why not him? And I get to thinking, and I go all the way back to day one, and I've come to some conclusions, and now I've realized they're my conclusions, and I'm kind of stuck with them. But I come to the realization that the day I was born, I figured it out. The day I was born, I had 2 strikes against me that right out of the chute, you know. First of all, I was born in this little town in Wisconsin, and you all know how little towns are. Everybody knows everybody's business, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad. And in my case, it always seemed bad. And the second thing I had against me was my dad was assistant chief of police in that damn town. And he was about 6'4", weighed 240 pounds, wore a uniform, carried a gun, scared the living bejesus out of you. And for the first 15 years of my life, I did everything that turkey told me to do, just out of fear, because I knew deep down inside, if he ever hit me, he'd kill me. You know, he's a big moose and a tough cop, and I'm scared to death of him. I mean, little things. If he told me to run to the store, I literally ran to the store. I didn't slow down when I got out of sight, neither. And I'd run all the way back. If he told me to carry out the trash, I carried out everything that even looked like trash. If he told me to rake the leaves, I even raked the neighbor's leaves. And in Wisconsin, they have a lot of snow, and he taught me very early in life, if 5 flakes of snow fell on our sidewalk, it's my job to take it off of there. And I did that religiously out of fear, like I say, until this magical thing that happens to all human beings happened. Everybody here, everybody out there, about the age of 15, something happens to human beings. Medical science still can't explain it. You know that it happened to you, and I know that it happened to me. And I don't know how it happened to you. If you don't believe any of this, go out here tonight, find a 15-year-old. Ask him or her a question on any subject in the world, and they'll tell you. The smartest thing walking the face of the earth right this minute is a 15-year-old, in their humble opinion. And you were no different, and I was no different. And I don't know about you, but all I can talk about is how I feel about it. And I can remember this like it happened yesterday. I got up that morning, got dressed, went downstairs, had breakfast, headed off to school. No big deal. Came home from school at noon. It was snowing. I know my job, right? But this thing happened in the night. And all of a sudden I said, screw it, I just won't do it no more. My logic and reasoning was, what will the neighbor say? A genius out there shoveling snow, you know, manual labor. All of a sudden it's beneath my station in life. I just won't do it. And I took that snow shovel and set it up in the house, set it up against the house, and went in and had lunch. Sat down in the kitchen, started eating my lunch. Then I heard the squad car pull up in front, and I heard the car door slam. Then I heard the shovel out there on the sidewalk, and I said, it's about time he does something around here. Did you ever have the feeling like you got to do it all? That's the way I felt. He came in the house all out of breath because he wasn't used to that manual labor. I am doing it all. Took off that uniform cap and that big heavy Mackinac they wear in the winter and that Sam Brown belt and that 45. Laid it on the dining room table like he did every day. Came in the kitchen, sat down at the kitchen table right across from me. And then he threw me a curve. He didn't say a word. And if you've just been endowed with the smarts, that will drive you nuts. Yeah, I'm just waiting for him to say something. I've been saving it up for 15 years, and today's the day. And he didn't say a word. And I finished my lunch ahead of him, and I had to go back to school. I can remember this like it happened this noon. Got up, walked around the kitchen table, had to go past him, out through the dining room, through the living room, out the front door, back to school. I can't explain this neither, but I'm sure you understand it. I just knew deep down inside, I could not let a situation like this go by without saying something. And I stopped right in front of him, looked him right in the eye, reached down inside, got one of them pearls of wisdom I'd just been endowed with, right? Looked him right in the eye, said the smartest thing I could think of. I said, is the snow heavy today? Big mistake. He didn't say a word again. He just kind of turned in the chair like this and came all the way from right field with a flatted hand, direct hit. And I took off in the air, up against the dining room windows. And when I came to, I developed another bad attitude. I said to myself, and only to myself, nobody can hit me like that and get away with it. I'll get even with him, by God, if it kills me. But 10 seconds before he hit me, 10 seconds at maybe the maximum, he was the sun, moon, and stars in my life. You know, the whole world, in my opinion, set on him. And that's what I'm going to be when I get big and all that kind of crap. And all he had to do was hit me one time, and the only time he ever hit me. I hate his guts, just like that. And in the quiet of my room at night, I used to plan his demise. I understand today that's not proper thinking for a 15-year-old to be planning his father's demise, but that's the way it really was. Right after some of these events I'm about to tell you, I believe, have had a big effect on my, including the hitting incident, have had a big effect on my attitude towards people, places, and things. And about a year after that hitting incident, another big deal happened. 3 of my supposed buddies and I come home from school about 4 in the afternoon, walk down the street, get to the corner to go down to my house. And there, passed out in the snowbank in full uniform, is my dad, dead drunk. And these 3 supposed buddies started teasing me about my drunk dad, the drunk cop. And we went to Fifth City right there, and I won. But I'll never forget the feelings and emotions I had that day. I realized then and there that he had disgraced that uniform he wore, disgraced that badge he wore, and lost the faith and trust of that community. that he had pledged his life to protect and to serve. Big deal. About a year after that incident, another big deal happened. At the age of 47, he died of chronic alcoholism. Didn't say that on his death certificate, incidentally. He's a big shot in that town. It said heart disease. But those of us who knew him and loved him knew that the booze had gotten the best of him. And I found another fact of life, that doctors lie on death certificates for certain people in certain towns, and they're still doing it today. Fact of life.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
About a year after that incident, another big deal happened in my life. I was going with this gal. When I say we were going together, we started out in kindergarten together. Same kindergarten, same grade school, same high school, same Sunday school, same church. Right out of high school, we got married. It was a beautiful event, crossed white shotguns, everything. She never did like me to say that, you know. I used to slough it off by saying it happens in the best regulated families, right? And right after we got married, like all women, she started to demand things, like furniture to sit on and curtains on the windows and all that kind of crap. And I don't have any money. And so I go down and see my dad's buddy, the chief of police, told the chief, she wants all this stuff and I don't have any money. He said, go up to the sheriff's department tomorrow. I think they need help. And any of you who come from a small town, you know the process. One phone call is all it took. Walked into the sheriff's department the next morning, they pinned a gold badge on me. And I got to be a drunk cop, just like my dad. And time doesn't permit me to tell you what can happen to a drunk cop, except stir up some old resentments, and God knows you probably don't need any more, especially when it comes to cops. Bunch of cop haters right over there. I can spot them a mile away. But I'll tell you right now, if I could be anything in this world, I could be this very minute. It'd still be a cop. I loved every minute of it. I loved all the excitement, the camaraderie, and everything that goes with being a cop. And I don't know what was going on in your life prior to entering Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'll tell you another fact of life. Do you know that 99 out of 100 human beings, that isn't only us, that's all those people out there, 99 out of 100 human beings have one thing in their life that's the single most important thing in their life. And in 99 out of 100 cases, that one single thing is another human being. Isn't it incredible? It's another human being. It's a wife, a husband, a lover, a child, a parent, grandparents, aunts, uncles, somebody is the single most important thing in 99 out of 100 people's lives, except cops. And I know there's no cops here tonight, but if there were, they'd tell you the same thing I'm about to tell you. I'd have done anything short of murder to keep that damn badge. It meant power to me. All I have to do is show it to you, I make you do anything I want you to. That's real power. And I don't want any newcomers to think I got a bunch of warrants in my pocket and you start heading for the doors, you know. They took that badge away from me a long time ago, and next to the night that she died, it was probably the second worst night of my life. Nothing I planned, because a bunch of cops and our wives are going to have a party. And I don't think there's anything different, incidentally, between a cops party and a civilian party, except maybe at the cops party the booze is all free. And that's where drunks like me really shine. I don't know about you, but I just love free booze parties. And I'm not the kind of guy at a free booze party sitting back there in the corner sipping on drinks with a little pinky sticking out, you know. I'm back there in the kitchen where the supply is, with both hands, getting all I can get until, in case they run out, you know. And I don't know how long we were at that party, and she saddled up next to me in the kitchen and says, we're leaving. I said, what are you talking about, woman? We just got here. At least it seemed like that to me. And she looked at me with them cold Al-Anon eyes and says, we're leaving. And I don't know to this day how she got the keys, because I'm like you know. It's my car, I drive. I'm sure nobody here ever said that. And she had the keys and we left. And all the way home, she started bad-mouthing me again about my drinking, you know. And every alcoholic, this whole scenario is in the book. It talks about it. It says that you and I, who are real alcoholics, go through life with blinders on us, like they put on horses, and we don't see anything that way, and we don't see anything that way. It's our way or no way. We're very selfish individuals. And she's yakking away at me and telling me these god-awful truths that I don't want to hear. And every alcoholic I know, when people are telling us these god-awful truths we don't want to hear, we have a switch up here and we shut it all off. I mean, it don't even hit the eardrum. It just over the top, you know. And I can't explain this to this day. On the way home that night, something happened. Maybe the switch went back on, maybe the blinders fell off, but maybe both. But for the first time in our married life, I started hearing some heavy-duty stuff she's laying them in. She's starting to say things to me like, how my drinking is affecting our entire life, she said. I said, now what are you talking about? She says, first of all, it's affecting our social life. I said, yeah, how's that? She said, we just had to leave that party back there for one reason and one reason only. I said, yeah, what's that? She said, because of your dirty, filthy mouth. I'm sure nobody here believes that either. And then she said, not only that, it's affecting every other aspect of our life. And I said, now what are you talking about? She said, it's affecting our home life, our family life, our kids' lives, our financial life, our sex life. Everything about us is being affected by my drinking. Now I'm certain she flipped her lid or something. We got in the house and she wouldn't shut up. And I reached for the only thing I know would shut her up, a 38. I said, woman, I've heard all I'm ever going to hear from you about my drinking. I can blow your damn brains out. And she took off like a deer. Out the front door of that house, 6 blocks down the street to the only place she knew she could get help, right? The sheriff's office that I work at. And I'd have got her, too, if she just slowed down. And you'd have a different speaker here tonight, too. I'd probably be up there walking the yard tonight and talking the talk and walking the walk. And so I am eternally grateful to something. Call it any damn thing you want to. But I am eternally grateful that I didn't pull that trigger that night. And I came out of that blackout standing in the middle of the sheriff's office at 3 in the morning with a 38 man, going to kill somebody. And all the guys coming off the late shift are standing around the squad room, and they're all looking at me kind of funny. You know how your family, friends, loved ones, fellow workers look at you when you're drunker than a skunk? They kind of look down their nose at you like you're some kind of second-class citizen or something. I can't even describe it. But I'll tell you another fact of life. If you don't know what I'm talking about right this second, you do not belong here. Those people near and dear to us really look at us funny when we're drunker than a skunk. And they're all looking at me kind of funny. And then the boss, the elected sheriff of that county, my dad's buddy. You know how I got in the department? Buddy. Heard the ruckus in the squad room, and he came in the squad room and looked at those guys coming off the late shift. Then he looked at me, and he and I are like this. I'll never forget it. He walked up to me, looked me in the eye, right in the eye, and says, Bob, hand it over, the badge and the gun. And he took away that badge, the gun, and the uniform, and I had to go out there and face that world bare naked. That's too much for a normal person, much less a drunk like me. And so at the age of 31, I did the most adult, mature thing I could think of. I ran away from home. If there's any runners here tonight, I want to talk to you outside after the meeting. But I'll tell you what, no matter where I go in this country or any other country, these rooms are full of runners. Do you know that? Running to something, running from something. And every runner who's ever come to Alcoholics Anonymous, including me, we all forgot one thing, and we all forgot the same identical thing. It's incredible. And that is, no matter where you're running to or running from, you forgot it, I forgot it. I had to bring me along, and you had to bring you along. And you is the problem, and me is the problem. And you can't make this thing alone, and I can't make this thing alone. But together we can make it. It boils down to one drunk talking to another, and it works. Works to the tune of over 2 million sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's good enough for me, man. That's good enough for me. And I consider myself a very fortunate member of this fellowship because over the years I've had the privilege, and I mean a privilege, to eyeball 50% of them, eyeball to eyeball. And I believe that's an earned privilege. It is not given. You earn the right to do this and suit up and show up and come to Culver City on a Saturday night and in heavy traffic. I'm not complaining, you know. I'm just reporting. And tell you another fact of life. And it's odd to say in a room like this, people like you and I, coming from where we've all come from, Well, it's another fact of life. Some of the finest people I've ever met in my life, and some are in this room, some of the finest people I've ever met in my life all turned out to be sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am eternally grateful just to sit amongst you and be counted amongst us, you know, because I found out now that as high as you get in this outfit is sober. We have some self-appointed gurus and we have to pray for them, but and I'm not going to mention any names. But God love them. I'll tell you about my last drunk and then we'll get the heck out of here. Because I've been here long enough to say this with authority. If you can't remember your last drunk, you probably haven't had it yet. And I don't know about any of you, but I never want to forget what was going on in my life the day I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. In utter desperation, incidentally. And if you're new here tonight, I hope you're as desperate about this deal as you've been about anything in your life. Because I believe the more desperate you are about this deal, the better shot you got at making it. My last drunk was no big deal. I didn't sit around and plan it for 3 weeks or something. It just happened. It was a Friday night, 27th of December, 1963. Just finished eating dinner. Made the big announcement to that woman and those kids. Told them I'm going out and have a couple beers with the guys. I'll be back in 2 hours. And she started that yak, yak, yak. You know what I'm talking about. And I said, listen, woman, I want to tell you something for the last time. I just put in 40 for a bunch of ingrates around here. And I'm going out and commiserate with my friends, and I'll be back in 2 hours, and I'll knock it off. And that was the 27th December, about 7:30. And I got back on the 13th of January, 1964. I can't tell you to this day where the hell I was. I know on the 27th of December, 1963, at about 7:30, quarter to 8, I headed for my favorite watering hole, a place called the Prelude. Now, isn't that a nice name for a dump? It has the connotation you're only going to be there for a little bit. The Prelude on Lancashire Boulevard in North Hollywood, which really ain't a hell of a lot to shoot for. It was one of them padded sewers I started to frequent. You know, you bar drinkers know what I'm talking about. I mean, they didn't even have a front door, just curtains hanging there. And I really went there to see these drinkers that I had met, you know, these fellow drinkers I had met, just like brothers, 2 weeks before. And sure enough, they were all there. Lifelong drinking friends. And sure enough. And we started doing the things that real drunks do in bars. They're doing it right now here in Culver City. They're doing it in my hometown. They're doing it where I live today. They're doing it all over the country. The same identical thing. Not one thing has changed. They're all standing around there talking in millions and spending in dimes, trying to impress people we don't know with money we don't have. If you're a smart drunk like me, you're trying to put the make on some dolly down there at the end of the bar and depress the heck out of them. And you know what? In this group of 6 guys I went to meet, fact of life, there wasn't one common laborer in the whole bunch. We were all brain surgeons and jet pilots and astronauts and doctors and lawyers and devout liars. And in this group of 6 guys was a new guy. His name was Pete. And Pete was one of them intellectual giants you meet in bars. And, you know, if you had marital problems, and I had marital problems, he had the answers. If you had legal problems, he had the answers. If you had medical problems, he had the answers. If you had engineering problems, he had the answers. I thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I thought, how can one guy know so much about so many things? And he continued that drunk with us, and thank God he did, because as it turned out, Pete was really quite the guy. He was the one guy in the group who it seemed was always well enough to make the run for the rest of us who were too sick to make the run. Pete could find a jug on election day in a dry state. One of them great guys. And we ended up in these abandoned cars, one of which was mine. You laugh. You know how your car gets to be an abandoned car? It's kind of a work of art. The tires are usually flat, the battery's dead, it's out of gas, and it's usually 6 months behind in payments. Then legally it becomes an abandoned car. It also got to be our living room, our kitchen, our bedroom, and our bathroom. It got a little salty in there. And one of those mornings, I can't tell you which one, we all came to and Pete didn't. And he had swallowed his tongue that night in a convulsion. And he was deader than a doornail. And I got fighting mad at everything and everybody, and God, if there is a God, because my great intellect and better judgment took over, which incidentally got you here and got me here. our great intellect and better judgment takes over. And my great intellect and better judgment said, you know, if there's a God, why would he let a good guy like Pete go, who knows everything there is to know about everything, and let me stay? And then I can't tell you the series of events that happened after Pete was gone. But this is what I never want to forget as long as I live. Early morning on the 13th of January 1964, some phenomena is taking place. I don't even know what the hell a phenomena is, but some weird stuff started happening. Because all of a sudden, out of that radio came the most beautiful music I ever heard in my life. I know today it was hallucinations because the battery's dead, right? But it's as real as I'm standing here. It was like the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra was in the car with us. And I thought to myself, this is how it must be just before you die. And whether you believe this or not, everybody sitting here tonight all have a little tape up here that you conjured up and that I conjured up about how it's going to be when we check out. And every one of them is different. And mine had something to do with music being played. And here was the music. And then I got scared. Have you ever been real scared? I mean, really, really scared. I thought cops aren't supposed to get scared. But I got real scared. And for the first time in my adult life, I got down on my knees in that sewer, cried out to a God I was absolutely certain did not exist. And if he did exist, he didn't want anything to do with a drunk like me. But I got down on my knees and said the only prayer I know. I said, God, if there be a God, the only prayer I know is help me. And wouldn't you know, at that same moment, about 7:45 in the morning, at her desk at Warner Brothers, my wife was at her desk and she started crying. And this big, tall guy, vice president of Warner Brothers, come walking through the secretary pool and saw her crying. He said, you better do that in here. And he took her in his office. And for her first time in the studios, she let it all hang out about this drunk that she lived with. And today's the day. She's got enough money saved up and they're going back. And he said, why don't you have them try Alcoholics Anonymous? And she says, how do you know? He says, because I are one. And that was the first time in his entire career of 37 years at the studio, he broke his anonymity that morning to help one sick alcoholic, me. And so I really owe a debt of gratitude to Matt Gilligan. God rest his soul. And I got to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that night, and it hasn't been necessary since. And I walked in that clubhouse that day, and there were no meetings going on, just two old guys sitting over in the corner playing cribbage. And I walked in the door like this, and they were sitting over there, and they stopped playing cribbage. And one of them poked the other one and pointed at me, and he says, we better do something with that one, or he's going to start jackknifing around the room here, you know. I mean, I wasn't nervous, just quick, you know. And they applied the only therapy those two guys knew. They gave me a bucket of paint and a paintbrush, figuring that I could paint faster than anybody else in the place. And I painted that damn clubhouse, and I can't tell you to this day how long I painted. I don't know if it was 5 days, 50 days. I don't think it means a hell of a lot. But I'll never forget the day I finished. The day I finished was a bright Saturday morning like today. Put away the buckets and the brushes, cleaned everything up just perfect. And then I found out the truth that one of them cribbage players had been a painter all his life. And the old thinking came back that fast. Why me, God? Why wasn't he up there painting? And I'll fix their clocks. I'll get drunk at every damn one of these phonies. Headed out the back door of the clubhouse, reached for the push bar in the back door of the clubhouse. The door opened up ahead of me. And there's this guy standing on the landing on a second story. He had a smile from ear to ear, and he says, hi! And I said, shove it. He says, why you say that to me? I don't even know you. I said, shove it anyhow. He said, come here, I want to talk to you. Brought me back in the meeting hall and set me down in one of them Henroid chairs, not these nice padded ones, them cold metal ones. And I told him about them gray-haired goats, and he made me paint that club, and I'm going to get drunk at every one of them. And he ended up being my sponsor. And he said, if I'm going to be your sponsor, 3 things are going to happen to you, man. 1, you're going to go to meetings. 2, you're going to study this book. And 3, for the first time in your adult life, you're going to follow instructions. I thought, how the hell does he know that? And they say at that time there were 700 meetings a week in the greater Los Angeles area, and we made them all. Today there's 2,400 a week. We made them all. It was meetings every night. And newcomers, it's going to happen to you because it's happened to every one of us, so don't feel bad about it. You're going to say to your wife, your husband, your buddy, your girlfriend, meetings every night. Tonight I'm not going. And that night he came by early. Put me in the car and started down the freeway. I said, where are we going tonight? He says, we're going to the hole in the ground. I thought, oh my God, now they're going to bury me. And for those of you who don't know where the hole in the ground is or was, it was underneath the Ebell Club in Huntington Park, California. It was started by a guy by the name of Tex Adams, who'd been sober since Lincoln had the measles. And thank God for people like Tex who started places like that for drunks like me. And he told me I had to study this book. He would not let up. He'd get me in a corner and the book in his hand and start pounding on the book and start, he's a crusty old bugger anyhow. And he'd say, between page 1 and 164 of this book is how drunks like him and millions of others before him had found a way of not to die from chronic alcoholism. He said, and if you don't want to do it, then get the hell away from me. I thought, how can he talk to a sick alcoholic like that? You know, don't he understand we're sensitive? He literally saved my life. He motivated me to do the one thing I would never have done on my own volition. I cracked the cover of the book, and I found me in there. Got to Huntington Park, started down the steps in the Ebell Club, and I can't explain this. This feeling came across. I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, Joe, I got to ask you something. He turned around real gruff again. He says, yeah? What do you want now? And I knew that second that he'd had me up to here. He was sick and tired of my BS, and I knew it. And I asked him that world-famous question that all newcomers are compelled to ask their sponsors. How long do I have to go to these damn meetings? And this wise old man with the x-ray vision got fighting mad. Took his index finger and shoved me into the corner outside the meeting hall so they wouldn't hear it inside. When he got me in the corner where I couldn't get away, he started to get violent. Yeah, he took his index finger and started to hit me in the chest like this, and he started to scream. He said, you idiot! I didn't like that. He said, you have to go to meetings until you want to go to meetings. Then you don't have to go to meetings anymore. Didn't make much sense then, but it sure does now. But that night, because he hit me in the chest and screamed at me, I'll fix his clock. I might have to be in the meeting, but I'm not going to listen. A couple here tonight doing that, you know. And I don't know what you do when you're sitting in a meeting not wanting to be in a meeting. But I was uptight like a spring. I'm saying to myself, this jerk, night after night, hauling me to these damn meetings, I'm going crazy. And when you're in that frame of mind, you aren't about to hear anything, you know. And I know he wouldn't give me the keys, and we're sitting in the front row, and I had to do something. I'm going crazy. So I started counting light bulbs. I would have had a blast in here. And then I run out of light bulbs, and I start winking at girls. And then I run out of girls. And then I spot this guy about halfway back, and he's scribbling on a piece of paper. I didn't know you had to take notes here. And I watched him. And he took that piece of paper he was writing on, took it, got out of the row he was in, went back towards the door, took the piece of paper, stuck it on the bulletin board, and split. I didn't know you could do that. And I'm an ex-cop, and I'm nosy by nature, and I got to find out what's on that piece of paper, right? Nosy. And I get out of where I am and sneak over to the bulletin board. Don't tell me there's no miracles. A little piece of paper, took it off the bulletin board, and it was a poem about drunks, and I read it, and it made sense. And when nobody was looking, I stole it. Took it along home, and on the days when I was absolutely certain that I just can't make this thing, you know, it might be all right for you clowns, but I can't make it. And yet I didn't want to go back out there in them damn cold cars and start drinking rot-gut wine again and die like my buddy Pete. So I get it on my billfold, read it, saved by can a million times, and now I thank Jim for asking me to be here. It's a little poem entitled, Which Place? I dreamed one night I passed away and left this world behind. Started down that lonesome trail some of my friends find. Came to a signboard on the trail, directions it did tell, keep right to go to heaven, turn left to go to hell. I hadn't been too good on earth, just a hopeless, boozing rake, and knew that at the crossroads a path I'd have to take. So I started on the rocky path that leads to Satan's place, and shook within not knowing just what I'd have to face. Old Satan met me at the gate. What's your name, my friend? I said, I'm just old sober Sam that's come to a sad end. He glanced through some files. You made a mistake, I fear. You're listed as an alcoholic. We don't want you here. I said, I'm looking for my friends. And a smile stole over his face. If your friends are alcoholic, they're in the other place. So I went back the other way till the crossroads I did see and returned right to heaven, as happy as could be. St. Peter smiled and said, come in. For you, I have a birth. You're an alcoholic. You've been through hell on earth. I saw old Dub and old Pete too, Bill C. and a friend called Bell, and brother, I was tickled because I thought they'd gone to hell. So brothers, all take warning, learn something from my trip. You got a place in heaven if you try hard not to slip. If someone tempts you with a drink when you're not feeling well, just tell him you're going to heaven and he can go to hell. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.